Kenny.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning. Over the coming year or two ahead of us, how are your consumers looking when it comes to their spending habits?
Generally, across Europe and in the UK, consumers are a little bit more cautious. People are still wanting to travel, and this coming summer, British consumers will travel in even greater numbers to continental Europe, but they'll be doing so at lower fares. That suits our business model quite well. We're happy to fill our planes to 94%, and we will grow 8% in the coming year to 130 million traffic. So it's a great time for consumers for getting low fares. We'll fill our planes and continuing what we do better than anybody else.
In terms of that, when you look at your results this morning, you do highlight a few things that could, add a bit of doubt into customers' minds. I mean, for one, if we look at the series of terrorist attacks that we've had across Europe in the last couple of years, including, of course, Manchester last week, are you starting to see that have any effect on travellers?
Historically, it has. So last year, we had 3 events between London, Nice and Berlin, and they do have an impact in terms of immediately people have a bit of anxiety about travelling, but then quickly their behaviour returns. The events in last week in Manchester are absolutely appalling, and our thoughts and our prayers are with the families that were impacted, but demand to fly into Manchester across Europe will continue. We're the biggest airline, for example, in Manchester, and we will see people wanting to continue to go to Manchester, not just during the football season, but year round. So travel inbound and outbound out of the UK is very, very resilient. Brexit has had an impact in sterling, and sterling has been all over the place versus the euro. That does make holidaying in continental Europe more expensive for British citizens.
And that trade deal that will come out of Brexit. I mean, whose Brexit would you prefer, Theresa May's or Jeremy Corbyn's?
We'd prefer no Brexit at all.
Well, it's going to happen, isn't it?
It's going to happen. I think at the moment our view is that this is going to be a fairly hard Brexit, and it's going to be an ugly divorce. Our call on the UK government is to speed up the negotiations once the election has happened, and to have an agenda, and on top of that agenda we think should be finding a new alternative to open skies. The UK has decided it's going to leave the European Court of Justice. That means the UK is leaving open skies.
So what are the consequences of that for travellers? If it goes ahead as, say, Theresa May might want to, or Jeremy Corbyn might want to at the minute, what could we see happen with our flights?
I mean, the worst case scenario is if there is no alternative agreed for open skies as of March 2019, that you will not be able to fly from the UK to Europe and vice versa. Now, people listening today will say, well, that's just alarmist talk. That is a real possibility until we see an alternative put together. We want open skies to continue. We want people from the UK to be able to travel to Europe and vice versa as they do today. But there needs to be a new alternative and a new bilateral agreement formed between the UK and the EU.
And if we look at British Airways, the problems they've had, the pictures in the papers over the last couple of days, why is it the second anything goes wrong when you're flying, it becomes a frustrating nightmare for passengers, whether you're sleeping in terminals or struggling to get complaints heard? Why can't airlines treat passengers a bit better?
I think some airlines can. I think we've probably changed.
You've had your fair share of headlines.
Absolutely, over the years. That's absolutely fair to say. But we've probably changed and improved more than any airline in Europe and the world in the past 3 years.
But why that starting point? Why is it so hard to begin with for you to just treat passengers fairly?
Again, I would say some airlines can improve. I think we have improved more than any other airline. When it comes to IT, we have 3 IT locations across Europe. We use one at any point in time. If something happens to one of those IT centres, then one of the other 2 will kick in so that we never have an outage. And thankfully, we've never had an outage.
Kenny, thank you very much. Kenny Jacobs, Chief Marketing Officer at Ryanair.